Guys, it's Lost in Plot, and we are back with Where the Crawdads Sing. That's right, it's the feature film adaptation of the best-selling novel of the same name. So this is a story about the Marsh Girl. It's set in the 1950s, 1960s.
Marsh Girl.
This is a girl that grew up all by herself living in a North Carolina marsh. So she is an outsider. This is very much a film about how outsiders live and how really they're vulnerable. And I like it so much because it bucks the trend. Nowadays you say like, oh, the outsiders, they're badass and cool all the time, right? You know that trope about being the outsider and standing apart? Oh, you're brave.
Too
and
cool
courageous.
for school. Edgelord.
Exactly. Well, in this one, being an outsider means you're shunned by the rest of society, and that's okay to a point, but ultimately, when our protagonist, her name is Kaya, when she goes on trial for murder later in this film, she's at the mercy of everybody else
There's a big
in the community.
price to be paid. There's a very real and a big price to be paid for that type of a lifestyle.
So she has got a very abusive father, and we see at the beginning of this film, we watch her grow up, and it's flashing back. We start in current day where she's on trial for murder. There's been a mysterious death, and she's the only prime suspect, and then we flash back to how she grew up in the marsh with an abusive father that literally one by one got rid of all of her family members until she's finally there all by herself as a little girl trying to survive in the marsh and ducking away from social services and trying to live a life there and not going to school, but she's taking solace in the marsh. So where the title comes from is something her mother told her when her dad was getting abusive. She said, anytime he's being abusive, just run out to the marsh, go as far as you can, as far out where the crawdads sing, to get away from that violence and that abuse and be safe out there. So that's where the title for the film comes from. But it's well done. It's well done. It's well written. It's well directed. And it's well acted all the way across the board. The other thing that I like, and again, it's bucking the trend, is we've got a heroine here that doesn't have to try and be masculine to be our protagonist.
Whoa.
That's right. You may not believe it, but she is an incredibly feminine character, and she stays that way through the entire film.
She's not steely-eyed and stoic, muscles glistening in the moonlight. She kicks the shit out of some abusive man.
Yeah, she doesn't fall into the trap that is trending in current cinema is about the strong female woman that's just as strong as a man, and she can prove it. And if you doubt her, she's going to rip your head off.
So fierce, so strong.
That's not what we have here, and I think that's why it's so refreshing for me and why I enjoyed this, is because she's very, very feminine, and being an outsider in that time period makes her incredibly vulnerable. She is incredibly vulnerable. It is easy to hurt her. And she has two different relationships with men, which makes up the crux of the story here. So,
you know, and that's kind of the thing, too, when we talk about the uber feminine, strong female protagonist, is this whole idea that it's very juvenile in the sense it's just like, people have vulnerabilities. We all have vulnerabilities. But in adolescence, it's like our vulnerabilities are like the scariest things. So we idolize superheroes, people who have no foibles, no flaws. They're absolutely perfect. They have all these powers, and therefore they hide all their vulnerabilities. And it's just so boring because it doesn't play real. So that whole female stereotype of the strong female protagonist was doomed to fail right from the outset because it's just not an interesting rendering, man or woman.
yeah. And she has these relationships with men. It really is what drives the story forward. So there's two types of men that she's going to interact with. And she has a few different examples of them. Now, as an outsider, as a vulnerable woman out there in the marsh, a certain type of man will see that as a vulnerable outsider and say, I need to protect that. It's my job to be the defender. This is the good man. He will be there to take care of that vulnerable person and make sure they're protected from the others around that could hurt them really badly. The second type of man is the one that sees that and is your victimizer.
Predator.
He sees an easy victim. A vulnerable woman out there like that is an easy victim. So Kaya is learning the difference between the two in her life and seeing this pattern of abuse that she grew up with revisit her as she's grown up as an adult in this situation, and it sucks her into this trial where big question is, did she or didn't she kill this guy? She had plenty of reason to do it, but could she have physically done it? Would she have done it? And what does that mean? How do we feel about that? And that is the big reveal for the end of Where the Crawdads Sing. Now, I haven't read this book. I have no idea if it's a faithful adaptation, but as a film, it's well structured and well written, and it's well acted. And I have it alive. I have it alive at a 6 out of 10 because it's not the common trope that you see in every film, especially when you have a female lead starring. And I like that.
Boy, and this is an interesting one. We definitely need some people to weigh in on it because I took a gander at Rotten Tomatoes on this and saw that critical reviews were splat down at like the 20-30%, whereas the audience scores were way up there in the 90s. So
really?
Audiences loving this movie, critics absolutely destroying it, not really sure what the idea is there. So if you've seen this movie, please check in. Leave us your thoughts and whether or not it was an enjoyable experience for you. Where does it come in for you?
I had it alive. I had it at a 6 out of 10. Might even have been a little bit higher, but again, I think it's just because, God, I hate all the other shit that they're making right now that it was so nice to see something like this. So it's raising it up, in my opinion.
There you go. That's the word on Where the Crawdads Sing. Please let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Like and subscribe. Check us out on Twitter, and we'll see you all on the next one.